Okay, so for this episode, I wanted to talk about the idea of one step at a time. First, let me introduce myself. So, for those of you who don't know, my name is Chris Kowalczyk. I'm a ESL teacher based here in the LA and Orange County area of Southern California, the United States, the world. And I've been teaching since 2007. I've been teaching English to non native speakers. Now, this podcast is really kind of just a project of mine, just kind of for fun. It's a way for me to talk about my ideas about language learning and as well as my own experience as a language learner and then also living abroad. And, some of those joys and struggles that come with that. But it's also for my current and former students. So I'm not really trying to reach a global audience. But if anyone here is not a student, well, I hope you find this interesting as well. So, my topic for today, again, is the idea of one step at a time. And I talk about this a lot here and there. I don't usually make it a main focus of any of my discussions, whether I'm in the classroom or here on my podcast. But I'm going to call this, one step at a time. So, or you can even say one brick at a time, one stone at a time. And the reason I use that analogy is one of my favorite authors is or was Stephen King. To be honest, I only like his works from the 70s and 80s. Anything after that, I'm not a big fan of, but that's a whole nother topic of discussion, of another discussion. But I remember one time he had this interview and somebody asked him, how do you write your books or something like that. And I think the interviewer was trying to get at some kind of profound answer. A lot of times when we think of artists, writers, painters, directors, whatever, we tend to think of the creative process as something magical, right? You hear a lot of people who want to be writers say, well, when I retire, I will write a book, or I need to find time to write a book, or I need some inspiration to write a book, or whatever artistic project they have. Or really anything. It doesn't even have to be artistic necessarily in the strict sense. It could be any kind of project, starting a garden, joining a hiking club or hiking, anything like that. Losing weight, exercising, anything like that. But anyway, getting back to Stephen King. So his answer, so again, the question was, how do you write your books? And Stephen King, I believe there were actually two separate interviews where it was a similar question. Let's go with the shorter one. So, how do you write your books was the question, and Stephen King said one word at a time. And that's it, right? I mean, technically it's one letter at a time. But I think the idea is, and if you don't know much about Stephen King, he's one of the most prolific writers out there. He's got a lot of books over his career, and you know what? He keeps writing. I mean, I think he's in the 70s or 80s by now. He's been famous since the 1970s. So he's still writing books. He's got a huge bibliography. He's even written under different names. Richard Bachman, I believe, is his most famous pseudonym or pen name. Anyway, so yeah, the shorter answer was one word at a time. How do you write your books? One word at a time. I believe there was another interview where there's a similar question, how do you write your books? And I think Stephen King started talking about the Great Wall of China, right? So we think of the Great Wall of China as some huge project. It took, I think, over 100 years. It wasn't built at once. So, we're talking about multiple generations of people. The people who started it never really saw it finished, right? And again, Stephen King gave a similar answer. He said, look at that Great Wall of China. He actually used a F word in there, F bomb. But he basically said one brick or one stone at a time. And again, I think you can say that about any kind of project or endeavor or any undertaking that you have in your mind. So let's bring that back to language learning. And so I hear this a lot. Students will often say, well, I don't have time to study. I don't have time to review. I don't have a chance to speak English. I don't have time to read, whatever. A lot of it comes down to time, right? And of course, that's really never true. We always have time for the things that are important to us, or we make time if we feel that they're important. But I think the idea is kind of similar, is that, well, you want to improve your English, right? And most students want to improve their vocabulary. Well, you improve one, or you learn vocabulary one word at a time. Could be one word per day, could be 2 words per day, could be 5 words per day. You want to practice your speaking more. You say hi to your neighbors. If you don't say hi to your neighbors, say hi. Talk to somebody you don't know. One conversation per day. These things add up. You have one extra conversation per day. That's 365 conversations at the end of the year. 366 if you are on a leap year. You want to learn vocabulary. You learn one word per day. You've got 365 new words by the end of the year. I would suggest more than one word per day, but you get the idea. You want to practice your writing more. Now, I wouldn't write one word per day, but I would write maybe one paragraph per day, even one sentence per day. At the end of the year, you've got a few thousand words probably. You want to improve your listening. Well, you listen to a podcast maybe 5 minutes a day, 2 minutes a day. At the end of the year, that's going to be a few hours, maybe 5 or 10 hours. I don't know. So it's the same with exercise, right? I always tell people who are struggling to find time to exercise. They say, well, I don't have time to exercise. I say, okay, you can take a 5-minute walk. You can do push-ups and some squats for 5 minutes. You can dance for 5 minutes. I don't know. 5 minutes is better than 0 minutes, right? Learning one word per day is better than learning 0 words per day. Having one conversation, even if it's a short conversation, is outside of the classroom, right? Having one conversation outside of the classroom is better than 0 conversations. When you're writing a book, you start with one word, okay? One word at a time. And I want to kind of bring in 2 experiences that I have. The first one is related to language learning itself. So my mom's from Japan. And I did study Japanese when I was a little kid. We had to go to Saturday school and, through osmosis, just through absorption. Of course, I learned some, simple phrases, basic vocabulary, a lot of food vocabulary, because, there's a lot of food that you don't have an English word for. And I did go to Japan every summer, but I didn't really speak much Japanese. There was a point maybe around 15, I'd say about 16 years old, I decided that I wanted to study Japanese and visit again. And then eventually I moved there. I lived there for about 6 years after 3 different points in my life: after high school, after college, and then when I finished my master's program in TESOL, I went back to Japan. Let's just call it 6 years altogether that I lived there. But when I was here in the US when I was 16, I used to keep flashcards with me. If you know what those are, if you remember those. I mean, this is the year 2000, right? So I'm making flashcards, put them on a little ring. And then when I was at work, I would just, if I had some downtime, if I wasn't really doing anything, I'd take out these flashcards and just kind of look through the vocabulary. These things add up. If I look at 10 words per day, again, that's over 3,000 words by the end of the year. If I look at 20 words per day, that's maybe 7,000 words by the end of the year. And so again, it's this idea of little by little, right? Anybody who has tackled a project or a large goal knows that if you can break it into smaller parts, more easily digestible parts, you're probably going to feel less overwhelmed, more likely to be successful, and so on. I always tell my students, if you're going to eat one of those foot-long Subway sandwiches, you don't put the whole thing in your mouth at once. You're going to choke. You finish your sandwich one bite at a time, right? I'm going to give another example. I do enjoy fiction writing. I have a few books that I've written drafts of, short story collections, and so on. Writing a book or even a short story is a very daunting, intimidating task. A lot of people who want to write or want to be writers, they wait, right? They wait until there's inspiration, or they wait until they have a weekend free, or they wait until they have the holidays, maybe a week or 2 off. They wait until retirement to finally start their writing project, right? Why? Why are you doing that, right? You write your book one word at a time. So what I do, and I was in that same mindset, right? Where I would kind of, I wish I had more time to write, and then I wouldn't write for a few weeks or sometimes a few months or something like that. But about 3 or 4 years ago, I started thinking, well, why wait? I'd rather have a few words, well, not a few words. Let's say I'd rather have a few sentences per day, maybe one paragraph per day. I'd rather have that than nothing. Might only be 5 minutes. So what I do every morning is, of course, I have to take care of my pets. I have 3 pets. Two of them are elderly, so they require more care. I must spend 2 or more hours per day just on taking care of these pets. But what I do though is I make sure to write at least 5, maybe 10 minutes every morning. And this includes work days, right? This includes holidays. Maybe one day per month or a few days per year, I just can't get to my writing. But these things happen, right? Maybe it's just a really busy morning. I have an early morning. I have to go somewhere. But I usually try to find time maybe later in the day or something like that. I actually used to write in the evening when I felt more creative. And I got to be honest, I'm more of a night owl. I tend to be more creative at night. And so I actually used to write a lot at night. And I used to write a lot, like several pages sometimes per day at night. But you know what? Things happen as you get older. I mean, this is when I was like in my early 20s, late teens, early 20s. I don't really have time for that now. Things happen. Pet stuff, seeing friends and family. Just tired at the end of the day, right? I'm working a full day, 8 hours, in addition to everything else. Just do it as soon as you can in the morning, right? Before all that BS of the day. And, I don't mean to say BS as in, well, I guess, yeah, there's drama of the day, your responsibilities, before all of that stuff. Get your 5 or 10 minutes of writing in. If you're a language learner, get a few words in, review a few words, review your notebook. I know students take notes during class. I see their notebooks. Review 5 or 10 minutes in the morning if you're not going to class that day. Hey, if you're going to class, don't worry about it. Class is going to be your English practice, right? Your English learning opportunity. But I'm saying on your days off or just as a general habit, even if you do have class that day, review a few words before class. So again, and so that's what I've been doing recently. Well, I guess the last few years. And you know what? A lot of times I don't want to do it, but when I think about at the end of the month or at the end of the year, when I think about or I look at how many pages I've written, all these little things add up, right? I got to the point where even though I have very busy mornings, I was writing about a half page, usually about a half page to 1 page every day, sometimes 1.5 or 2 pages every morning. We're talking 20 minutes or so. But you know what? At the end of the year, that's like over 100 pages, close to 200 pages. And then on the weekends, when I do actually have a lot of free time, at least in the mornings, then I can write 5 pages in the morning, right? The idea here too, and I'm kind of going slightly off topic here, but I think another reason to kind of stick with this one word at a time idea, whether that's one word that you review for vocabulary or saying hello to one person or writing one paragraph in your English journal or listening to 5 minutes of a podcast every day or something like that. And it's not only that these things add up, that they accumulate, right? But also you have to remember that momentum is a big part of learning or of any project, right? Think about how many people join the gym and in the beginning they go really hard. They're working out 1 hour a day, every day, or I shouldn't say that. Maybe they're working out 3 hours a day, right? 3 days a week, right? And then they take a week off, and then they take another week off, and then, before you know it, 6 months, you haven't been in the gym. So I believe, and again, this is my bias or my personal approach to life, is I believe the little things every day, they don't have to be little, but doing something every day to me is more important than doing it big once in a while. I believe in generating and maintaining momentum. And for example, for writing, whether that's writing fiction or writing nonfiction or whatever, and I think that when you have these long layoffs or when you write only on the weekends, I believe it's easy to just take another week off and take 2 weeks off and then 4 weeks off. You want to build this habit. I recommend every day, whether that's language learning, exercising, whatever. If you lift weights, okay, maybe that's a little bit different, but if you're just thinking about exercise in general, you do a little walking one day, the next day you do some weights or resistance training, maybe the next day you do some stretching and yoga, But this idea is that you're staying active every day. You're not waiting until maybe just 2 days a week to exercise, and in the other 5 days you're kind of sedentary or you're not really moving much, right? Maintaining that momentum, building that daily habit, even if it's only a few minutes, even if it's only one word at a time. I feel like this is getting kind of serious. Maybe that's just because I'm a little tired. It's a Sunday afternoon. I'm a little sleepy, to be honest. My pets woke me up early, like a little after 6. But, such is life, right? But I do get a little, I don't know if frustrated is the right word, but I do get kind of fired up, worked up, because I really feel that, and I'm not the only person to think this, but I really feel that we build these good habits, and that is what is going to sustain us in the long term, right? Rather than sprinting. And I just had this conversation yesterday, actually, with a friend. We were talking about making every day a good day, more in the context of work, but I think there's some parallels or some overlap here with what I'm trying to say. Is that rather than just trying to sprint, right, towards the end, or you have this burst of motivation where you study for 4 hours one day, and then you take like 2 weeks off, right? So I believe rather than doing those kind of intermittent or inconsistent bursts of hard work, I think you got to do it every day, if as much as possible anyway. So again, one word per day, one brick per day. How do you build a wall? You build a wall one brick at a time, one stone at a time. How do you write a book? You write a book one page at a time. How do you learn a language? You learn it one word at a time, one conversation at a time. How do you improve your writing? One sentence at a time, right? How do you read a book, right? How do you finish a book? And maybe I can stop here, or this can be the last point, because I am going to be cooking dinner soon. People say I don't have time to read, right? And I was like that too, or I don't really feel like reading. I want to read more. I used to read a lot, and then now I just don't have time, or I don't have the mental energy, or whatever, right? And then about 3 or 4 months ago, I started thinking, well, I don't really feel like sitting down and reading for an hour or two like I used to. I got to be honest. I just can't do that. I'm just not like that anymore. I just can't do that anymore. I don't know if I can't concentrate or whatever. When I play video games, I play maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then my brain feels like it's going to poop out, right? It feels like it's going to shut down. So then I started thinking, well, how do you finish a book? You read a book one word at a time, just like you write a book. So I started thinking, okay, well, I'm going to keep a book in my car. And I'm talking about paper or physical copies. I do have a Kindle, but that's a different story. So I keep a physical book in my car. I keep one I'm just going to say it, I keep one in the bathroom. People have reading material in the bathroom, right? Everybody does it, or used to do it before smartphones. I have a few books in the bedroom. I have a few books in the living room. I have books kind of everywhere in the apartment. And as I mentioned, I also have a book in my work bag as well. Although when I'm at work, I am like super busy. But the point is, well, I started finding, well, if I read a page here, I read a page there. And you know what? I think in the last 3 months since I've started this, I've probably finished 3 or 4 books. And I think I've read a total of maybe, these are kind of, some of them are shorter books, but I think I've read a total of maybe 300 or 400 pages. Maybe I shouldn't. Yeah, I would say about 300 or 400 pages total. Maybe a little bit more within the last 3 months or so, which is a lot more than I read last year. And so I feel like it's kind of a similar idea, right? How do you reach 10,000 steps? 10,000 steps is a thing that people are doing a lot of these days. Well, how do you reach 10,000 steps? You literally look at your pedometer or your app, and you're gonna reach that one step at a time, right? I know this sounds a little corny. I know I'm kind of saying the same thing over and over again. I'm rambling a little bit, but I just think it's really that simple. I don't think there's any magic there. I don't think there's any magic formula for motivation. You just got to do it a little bit every day is better than a big thing once in a while. let me finish up here maybe by talking about my experience in Japan. Now, earlier in this episode, I did talk about studying Japanese when I was in high school. When I had some downtime at work, I'd have my flashcards, right? Look at a few words, when I had a break or when it was slow at work. When I was actually living in Japan, I didn't drive. Right, most people don't drive. I was living in Tokyo. Most people don't drive in Tokyo. Why would you? Right? It's stupid. I will tell you what. One thing I really miss about Japan is not having to drive in the city anyway, and not only that is that your company will pay for your transportation, meaning your train pass or your bus pass, which you can use on the weekends, which you can use during the summer and winter breaks, and the holidays. I was a teacher there as well. And I didn't have to pay for car insurance because I didn't have a car. I didn't have to buy gas. I didn't have to maintain my car. I didn't have to pay for registration. Man, I think I was saving $500 or $600 a month just by not having a vehicle. But then again, the salaries are lower. But then again, cost of living is lower, and then that's a whole nother discussion. But anyway, I tell you what though, when there's a typhoon or bad weather in general, it really sucks to not have a car. I'll say that. But yeah, so when I lived in Japan, we're talking 2004, and then back in 2007, and then again in 2010 for about 5 years. So smartphones were really not available. And when I left Japan, smartphones were kind of becoming popular, but I still had like a basic flip phone at that time. My point is, I was taking public transportation to work. So I was on the train maybe about 30 minutes each way. So let's say I was on the train about an hour total every day minimum on work days. And then sometimes if the weather was bad, I would take the bus as well. I would take the bus from the station to the actual school, which is another 10 to 20 minutes, right? 10 to 15 minutes. What's my point? Well, what was I doing? I was reading, or I was reviewing my Japanese. I had a notebook. I had my Japanese books, just like a novel or a comic book. I was not on my phone. And maybe that's the point I'm going to finish off with here. Oh, let me finish living in Japan. So, and the beautiful thing too about Japanese books is that a lot of them are really small. Like you could put them in your pocket, your front pocket. I'm not talking about like a jacket pocket. You could literally put them in your front pocket. They're that tiny. Almost the size of index cards, slightly larger than index cards maybe, or the size of a small memo pad. And I would just carry them everywhere I went, waiting for the train, whatever, right? Waiting at the platform. So let's include waiting for the train or waiting at the bus stop. And we're talking about over an hour every day, a minimum that I was able to read or review. And I would have, I had a full-size notebook that I would keep in my backpack or work bag. And I would review all my vocabulary and grammar and all that. But I also used to keep a little notepad too, which I can also review. I didn't use flashcards at that time. That was only in high school. What's my point here? My final point. Got to get off your phone. The phone is killing us. The smartphone is killing us. Not just the smartphone, the iPad, the constant internet or constantly connecting to the internet. That's killing us in regards to our goals. That's really preventing us from reaching our goals. It's eating away at our time. Playing Candy Crush every time we have 5 or 10 minutes free when we're waiting at the doctor's office. I know everyone's on their phone when they're in the toilet, right? I've been there. I'm guilty. Come on, I'm human too, right? Or not even the phone. Bringing the iPad to the bathroom, right? And then what happens? After you finish your business, you're still on the toilet for like 5 more minutes watching videos, Instagram, whatever, TikTok. I've been there. Like, come on. I'm finally waking up. My brain's finally waking up now because we're talking about toilet humor. But I mean, I think everyone knows this. Even if you haven't done it yourself, you know it happens a lot. You're in bed. You're waiting for your husband or wife to get ready. You've got 5 or 10 free minutes. What happens? You pull out your phone. Why are you pulling out your phone? Your goal is to learn English or to learn whatever language. Why are you taking out your phone? Take out your note cards. Take out your notebook. Open your English book that you're reading, if it's a novel or whatever, right? You're in the car, listen to English something for 5 or 10 minutes, a podcast. Listen to this podcast, which you're already listening to. Again, I don't mean to sound too harsh, but I think maybe my final point is something that I mentioned kind of earlier in this podcast series, which I do try to bring up from time to time. Is I think at the end of the day, we know whether we are using our time well, and whether we are really working towards our goals, and whether we're making excuses. And I think if we do this 1 word per day or 5 minutes per day of studying or reviewing or whatever, writing, talking to somebody. And I think if we do this every day, it creates this habit, but it also keeps us accountable. Um, and we know that smartphone is killing our goals, right? And so maybe we'll kind of end it there. So what's my final points? Maybe first thing is do a little bit every day. Um, You build a wall 1 brick at a time. You build the Great Wall of China 1 stone at a time. You write your book 1 word at a time. You learn a language 1 word at a time. You build your confidence in speaking 1 conversation at a time. You build your writing ability 1 sentence at a time. You build your listening, whatever, right? So do that. Do a little bit every day, even if it's just 5 minutes, even if it's just a few words. My other point is put away your phone. Don't reach for your phone unless you really need it or you have a specific purpose. Use your phone with intention, and if you don't need your phone, put your phone away. Review English, whatever. I know it's tempting to use your phone to review English, but there's always that danger of you getting distracted. So I'll just say that. You use it responsibly. I just stay away from my smartphone. I never read anything on my phone. If I read something, it's going to be on my Kindle device or it's going to be on a physical copy of a book, for the most part. And if I do watch YouTube, I try as much as possible to watch YouTube on my TV so that I don't constantly get distracted by new videos. But that's a whole nother thing. What was my third point? I guess I already forgot. Okay, well, why don't we end it there? That was kind of maybe not the most interesting topic, but I really wanted to talk about that. It's something I always used to talk about to anybody who, any other writers when I had a writing group. This is something I always talked about. Write your book 1 word at a time and make sure you do something every day, even if it's just 5 minutes. Even if your writing is garbage, I would say, even if it sucks, like the quality is not good, you did it. You did 5 minutes a day. That was my third point. You got to maintain momentum. Again, which is why I always recommend at least a little bit every day. And maybe this will be my final point, is that when you do a little bit every day, kind of like when I was talking about exercise, go for a 5-minute walk. And then you can say, I did 5 minutes today because 5 minutes is better than 0, right? Well, studying English, right? It's the holiday breaks. You have 2 or 3 weeks with no school. Your family doesn't speak English with you. You don't really have a lot of native English speaking friends. You review for 5 minutes. You say, okay, I can review English for 5 minutes, my notebook. And then 5 minutes, and you say, okay, I can do 5 more minutes. So that's 10 minutes total. And then you say, I can do 5 more minutes. Now that's 15 minutes total. I can do 5 more minutes. You got 20 minutes total. Or maybe you do 5 minutes before breakfast, then you do 5 minutes on your lunch break, then you do 5 minutes in the bathroom. I don't know, maybe you take your notebook into the bathroom. I have no idea. Whatever you want to do, right? So you spread it out throughout the day. But you creating that momentum. And this is something I did with my fiction writing, is that I would say, okay, I'm going to do a minimum of 5 minutes this morning. And I would write 5 minutes, and then maybe that's a paragraph or 2. And then I would say, you know what? I can do 5 more minutes. Then I would do 10 minutes. And I can say, I do 5 more minutes. And then maybe that's a page already. And some mornings, I would do 5 minutes and the writing was not good. Sometimes 5 minutes would be 1 sentence. That's pretty bad. And I would say, that is enough for today. I cannot do more. But you know what? I'm keeping that momentum going. I'm keeping that fire going. Staying on that wagon. Okay? All right. I'm going to end it here. That's just under 30 minutes. And my target, my limit is, self-imposed limit is going to be 30 minutes for each episode so that I don't burn myself out. I did take a week off, or was it 2 weeks off? Because I am on the final day of my winter break, actually. But I do hope to be back on the weekly schedule, again, to keep and maintain that momentum. Okay, so if you do have any questions, just leave a question in the comment section. You can always ask or offer a suggestion. Give me a suggestion for a topic in the future as well. And oh, that's my timer. Actually, I got to go pick up my laundry. Okay, well, I hope this was helpful, and I'm going to try and think of some other topics in the future. I do have one that I want to do for AI and learning and communication. I've been using AI for my own Japanese language review to help me because I am planning a trip to Japan, or I do have a trip planned already for in about 3 months from now. So that will probably have to be a video, though. I'm looking forward to that. That's going to take a little more time. But maybe that should be the next thing. Yeah, AI for language learning, communication, and so on. Okay, thanks everyone for listening. I hope you can kind of do a little bit every day, even if it's only 5 minutes or even if it's just a few words.